An old story will have a new twist in the upcoming premiere of an opera. The story's about the artist and the muse, but also about the perilous frontier between inspiration and reality. The opera's called Switch. Our guest is the writer and composer and the executive director of the performers, the Ecce Ensemble. He's also a professor at Clark University. We'd like to welcome John Aylward. Thank you very much for being with us, John.
You bet, thank you.
First of all, this is opera, but it's not opera at an opera house or a symphony hall. This is going together with an installation. What's that going to be like exactly?
Well, I think there are a couple of ideas behind that question. It's a good question. Why are we performing an opera in an installation gallery? I think that, sometimes these pursuits come out of necessity. Opera it's a struggling genre in a way. The great operas have a home, and how do we understand contemporary opera? Where's the home for contemporary opera? So actually, I have to applaud Le Laboratoire for providing a space and a home for contemporary modern chamber opera.
This is a new space, so walk us through it. What's it going to be like if you were in the audience?
Well, we're actually creating, as you say, a kind of installation stage. We're installing a stage in the gallery. Now, that is really to create the space for the artist and his muse to play. So, in a way, the Le Laboratoire, it's a kind of playground for us. I think that in general, every artist will go into that space and kind of imagine his or her own installation. And we've brought our own kind of concerns, artistic, acoustic, musical, to the space. And we've designed a stage that fits in the space, can accommodate a healthy audience, and kind of morphing it into a chamber opera space.
Talk about the topic here, because whether we're talking about the actual muses or just some significant other who's the inspiration for the artist, this is as old as Monteverdi and Orfeo.
Yeah.
How do you make this fresh?
Well, that's a great question. I think that, for me, I think that I'm just writing my music, and I'm certainly hoping that it feels fresh, that it feels different. But in the end, all we can really do is write our music. I think one perspective I've taken is to incorporate a lot of different literary inspirations. So you'll hear excerpts of a Plato dialogue. You'll hear D.H. Lawrence, Calvino, Joseph Campbell, all these various perspectives on the muse. So in a way, I think you could almost say that this story doesn't really require, but maybe it even begs a little bit to be updated. That there's been so much through the 20th century on this topic. Why not kind of concatenate some of those ideas and put them into the filter them through, so to speak, an opera?
I want to show our viewers an excerpt from one of the performances by Ecce Ensemble, because they're almost like characters in the story. John, one impression a lot of people will get from this, if nothing else, with these musicians, is that they're really pushing the envelope on what we normally think of as the range for their instruments. Mm-hmm. Why is that so important?
Well, I think, as we are exploring the depths of the material, why not explore the depths of the instruments? So these performers are so good. I have to say, I'm blessed.
That looks pretty difficult to play.
Yeah, it definitely it's challenging, but it's a collaboration. I work with them. We sit down together. We find out what works, and so it's a very personal. The music is very personal, and the relationships we have are very personal ones. We've been working together for years, so I think that sound It's not really a sound of what's happening in my mind, written out, and then executed. It's actually a sound that is about constant collaboration, constant back and forth. Can you do this? Can you try this? Don't try that. That wasn't so good. Learning from them. You know, it's so interesting. You spend quite a lot of time getting an education as a composer, and then you find out at the end of that really your best education is simply to work hand in hand with the performers. And that's where that music really comes from.
Well, another way of going hand in hand with things is that you're not just going to put this performance out there, you're going to have some events to engage people with it as well.
That's right, yeah, and I think that's part of the collaboration we have with Le Laboratoire, that sense of wanting to bring audiences into the gallery fresh every time. They can experience the gallery in a different way.
You mentioned something about the need to rethink opera at this time. I mean, I'm sure there are companies that bring in lots of people, they make a fair amount of money, but what's the missing link here, especially, I guess, to the wider audience, maybe?
Well, that's a really good question, and I would say that the missing link today is how contemporary music can really interact with theater. So I would say that opera has always had a theatrical tradition. And through the 20th century, even in the early 20th century, we had fascinating works that were truly integrated with theater. Think about Bertolt Brecht, for example. Today, theater has its own tradition. Film has such a fabulous tradition. And now, at the beginning of the 21st century, can we look at contemporary music as an equal player again back in the theater? And I think a lot of opera theater is now surfacing, and you'll see that in a lot of chamber opera productions, kind of a re-emphasis in the theatrical aspects of opera.
I mean, it's so easy to find music videos on YouTube, including the Brecht, but
yeah, sure.
But on the other hand, talk about the difference between looking at something on a video, on the internet, and being present in this room where this music's
Oh,
being.
wow. Yeah, that's another good question, because I think about that a lot. Contemporary music, not just any kind of music, it requires a fixed attention. And if you're looking at something online, you're one click away from turning it off. You are so easily distracted. You can open up another window. If you're in the space, you really have to engage. That takes quite a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of attention. So I'm very thankful to anyone who wants to participate as an audience member in a production of mine, because I see that they're coming to the table with a lot of attention and patience. They want to be there and to really immerse themselves in it. Now, that's nothing to say of the acoustics, of the obvious qualities of the live performance. But I think today, with so much available digitally, this really is the issue of how can we hold the attention of an audience.
You should mention if people want some more details, because you got the performances coming up over the next few weeks. So what's the best way to check that out?
The best website, Le Laboratoire has all the information, and you can find them online very easily. Another quick link would be switchopera.com.
And of course, the location's on the red line as well. Thank you very much for being with us.
You bet, thank you.
John Aylward, and we'll have more news in just a moment.